Welcome to the role of sub-site supervisors. This webinar explores the important role of sub-site supervisors. This information is also shared at the in-person supervisor orientation, so please consider this as a mini orientation. I'm Jessica Birch from the Office of AmeriCorps VISTA Training Unit here at the Corporation for National and Community Service. Assisting me today off-screen in the producer role is Jess Knight from Education Northwest. You'll see Jess in the chat and the Q&A to assist you during today's session and to help get your questions answered. Amy Kanata and I will be co-presenting today. Amy has been engaged in various national service projects at Education Northwest and has been working with VISTA since 2008. For the past 3 years, she has been focusing on supporting the work of VISTA supervisors by developing resources for the VISTA campus, designing and delivering webinars, and writing curriculum for the supervisor orientation. We would also like to welcome our guest speaker for today. Jimmy O'Brien is the Program Director for the Oregon Asset Building Corps, a VISTA program with members throughout Oregon's Willamette Valley. Prior to supervising the OABC, he served as its VISTA leader. He completed his first term at a nonprofit in rural Maryland in 2008 and came back to the nonprofit sector in 2012 after earning an MFA in writing. We will be hearing more from Jimmy throughout the webinar today. So let's go over today's agenda. Here's what we hope you'll get out of this webinar. We'd like you to be able to recognize how you fit into the National Service Network. We'd also like you to be able to explain the mission of VISTA and define capacity building through real-world examples. We'd also like you to be able to coordinate with your intermediary or supervising organization contact to create a shared task list. And last but not least, we hope that you are able to prepare for effective VISTA member management. Throughout today's session, we will be referring quite a bit to the VISTA Campus. The VISTA Campus site includes dedicated sections for members, leaders, and supervisors. The supervisor pages contain go-to for resources to help manage your VISTA project and connect with your peers. If you have not visited the VISTA Campus yet, we encourage you to check it out after this session. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk to you about how you fit into the VISTA family. Amy, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. This is Amy Kanata with Education Northwest here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm very excited to be here on this call today. Supporting supervisors and making your job easier is really one of my passions. I've been doing this work since about 2008, so it's a pleasure to be working with you today. First, I just want to thank all of you who submitted your responses in the chat panel about the focus of your role as a VISTA supervisor. I saw some great suggestions there. I heard folks saying that they often are working on checking on the status of VADs, helping their members achieve both their professional and personal goals. A lot of stuff around inspiring members and guiding them, and also just helping them think about how to action plan based on the goals in their VAD. And then finally, this one I liked a lot, providing clear direction and the tools needed to be successful. So let's go ahead and dive right in and learn a little bit more about how you fit into the VISTA family. As you can see, we reside within a strong network across the country made up of national AmeriCorps VISTA programs and state offices. This framework on the right-hand side of the screen is a good example of how projects with sub-sites are structured. Of course, the number of sub-sites and VISTAs for each site varies greatly across projects, so this is just one example. As a sub-site supervisor in your role, you'll be working closely with your intermediary organization or sponsor to divvy up the responsibilities of managing the VISTA project. As I said, each partnership is different, so it's important to communicate early and often with your intermediary organization to outline rules and tasks. In general, the intermediary organizations are ultimately responsible for all aspects of the program, but the role of the sub-site supervisor is crucial. So some shared tasks that you will likely do in conjunction with your intermediary include recruiting, interviewing, and selecting candidates, providing training opportunities for VISTA members, Of course, day-to-day supervision and support for VISTAs, including monitoring attendance and use of leave days, and also collecting data for reports. So let's take a look at how you fit in. The relationship you have with your VISTA impacts you and your VISTA member, and also just really shapes the day-to-day progress and interactions that lead to the long-term outcomes we're looking for. Many of the VISTAs say that their supervisor made a huge impact on their life. For supervisors, it's an honor to serve with VISTA members, and we hope that at the end of their service, your members will reflect back and name you as an influential person and mentor. So let's hear from Jimmy, who's going to talk a little bit more about how sub-site supervisors influence the work. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thanks, Amy. So Mercy Corps sponsors 15 VISTA placements at 11 different agencies, and we're entering our 4th year as a project sponsor. Over the past few years, we've learned that site supervisors are absolutely essential in making the VISTA year successful. They're crucial to providing members with personalized mentorship and feedback that can help the members grow. While we as an intermediary provide them with general skills and general mentorship, the site supervisor is in a really unique position to hone in on the members' hard skills and work with them on a micro level. A good supervisor can be a make or break for a VISTA term. We experience the best outcomes for both the member and the site when we have a site supervisor who has the knowledge to guide the VISTA and takes the time to do so. This requires familiarity with VISTA policies and procedures and a willingness to respect those policies, even when they might mean making accommodations or exemptions for the member. The supervisor should be directly responsible for the project and understand it intimately. Typically, we recommend that VISTA supervisors are program supervisors of the project on which the VISTA is working. When we communicate regularly, sponsors and sites are able to prevent conflicts or address them at an early stage. This reduces attrition, increases satisfaction, and allows us to have a better grasp on accomplishments to report to CNCS. Supervisors should be willing to mentor members and help them build hard and soft skills that will serve them through their professional lives. They should be able to provide constructive feedback and provide good role models for professional behavior. Supervisors should also have a unique appreciation for the unique role that VISTAs adopt and the limitations on the services they provide. They should respect the fact that VISTAs can't do certain things and that asking them to do unrelated tasks like direct service is both a violation of the policies regarding VISTAs and is also unfair to the members since it puts them in a difficult situation. At times, supervisors will need to be the gatekeeper to the VISTA to shield them from being pulled into tasks that are not VAD-related. A strategy for helping them with this is to introduce the VISTA to staff when their term begins, especially staff members who are key to completing the work of the VAD. Supervisors should plan on devoting at least 1 full hour per week to the VISTA member and should also maintain an open-door approach outside of regularly scheduled meetings. Now, I'll turn it back to Amy.
Thank you, Jimmy, for sharing some of those attributes of strong VISTA supervisors. I imagine that folks are wondering what the responsibilities are for sub-site supervisors. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a resource from the VISTA Campus that was designed for intermediaries and sub-site supervisors to really lay out a foundation for project success. We're going to show you the tool, and then we're also going to post a copy with the recording of this webinar, which will be posted in about a week. So on your screen, you're looking at the VISTA Supervisor Major Tasks at a Glance resource. And this checklist was designed, as I mentioned, to really help you divvy up the tasks between you and your intermediary. The document also includes links to resources for each task. And it really is a great talking point that you can use with your intermediary to delegate the various project tasks. And also, each of the tasks has associated resources, and those are links to resources that live on the VISTA campus. So we have designed this webinar to follow the checklist. So the good news is that you've actually already checked off a few tasks on this list. So next I'm going to go ahead and walk through some key background information that everyone needs to know about CNCS and VISTA. One of our goals for today's webinar is to examine the mission of VISTA and also look at the history and key facts of the program, the mission, as well as the role of VISTA members. As a sub-site supervisor of a VISTA member, it's very important that you become familiar with the background and mission of AmeriCorps VISTA. Your members are going to arrive at their sites with a good understanding of the VISTA program. Having a good grasp on your own will help you operate with the same focus as your VISTA member. And as many of you know, VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America, and it was started in 1965 as part of the War on Poverty, with the mission to build capacity of nonprofit organizations and communities to help bring individuals and communities out of poverty. In 1994, President Clinton started AmeriCorps, and VISTA was incorporated into the AmeriCorps network of programs. This year, VISTA is celebrating its 50th anniversary. There are three ways that individuals can serve in VISTA. Members who serve full-time for 1 year. Members can also serve for 8 to 10 weeks as summer associates. And those that have served at least 1 year can also serve again as a VISTA leader. Since 1965, over 192,000 VISTAs have served local organizations to strengthen communities and help people escape poverty. Last year alone, over 7,000 VISTA members served with 800 anti-poverty programs. VISTA's helped raise over $200 million and mobilized 1.7 million community volunteers who served 13.5 million hours. So these numbers are quite impressive, and you're part of this. You're part of this amazing program that builds capacity in communities across the country. We hear the term capacity building a lot in VISTA. So what does that really mean? Let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and administer a poll to see what you already know about capacity building. So the poll should be appearing on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see it, you may need to click on the little polling icon on the upper right. And we want to know capacity building for VISTA members is A, create, expand, or strengthen an organization's system or processes. B, provide services to the identified recipients or clients of a program. C, transfer knowledge, products, and relationships to staff and volunteers. D, carry out clerical work and administrative tasks of the host site. Or E, I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm looking forward to learning more. So you can choose as many of these options as you think are appropriate. And we'll do about 30 more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and close the poll and publish results. Couple more seconds. It's okay if we don't get everyone. All right, let me go ahead and share those. It's calculating. I'm seeing a lot of people have said A, create, expand, or strengthen organization systems or processes. C, transfer knowledge. Let's see, next up, there are quite a few folks that we're not able to answer, but that's okay. So it looks like the majority of you were right on with the correct answers, which are answers A, C, and E. So let's go ahead and take a look at the official definition. As you see, create, expand, or strengthen an organization's systems or processes is part of that. And I think that the second one is really key, transferring knowledge, products, and relationships to staff and volunteers of the host site. So when a VISTA member focuses on building capacity, it really does allow the organization and the community to sustain the VISTA project activities once the official project period has ended, and that's what we're all trying to do here. So ensuring the sustainability of a VISTA project is the supervisor's responsibility. The way the VISTA members contribute to this process is by building capacity of the organization and the community. So this concept can be a little bit tricky for folks, so let's take a look at some examples. In contrast to capacity building, direct service activities provide assistance directly to clients or projects in the short term, but don't leave a lasting impact. The role of the supervisor is to make sure that the VISTA is focused on capacity building and that their assignment and activities build capacity within the program and the community. So let's take a look at a real-life example. Many of you are familiar with Habitat for Humanity. In this scenario, a VISTA member has been placed at a new Habitat for Humanity site where their goal is to build the volunteer program. So I want to take a few minutes to have you chat and tell me what type of activities do you think this member might do for Habitat? And what you're going to do is you're going to enter your ideas into the chat panel. If you don't see the chat panel, you'll want to click on the little chat icon at the top right of your screen. Be sure to send to all participants so everyone can see your answers. So what type of activities would this person who is charged with strengthening volunteer programs, what kind of activities might they engage in for Habitat? Resource development. Right. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I just wanted to read out some of these here. We had a lot coming in. So let's see what you guys are saying. So raising awareness and funds, building a volunteer database, which is always a good step, establishing and planning the recruitment process for volunteers. We were saying marketing here. Let's see, outreach, a lot of recruiting volunteers, a lot of volunteer work, managing those. Let's see, recruitment and tracking. Tracking is always a good way to make sure, you know, who's with your organization, what they're doing. Let's see, what else do we have here? A lot of these are all on the same page, which is really great. Recruitment, fundraising, getting volunteers for projects, developing a program procedures. It's really great making sure you know what's expected of the volunteers, what those procedures are. Also establishing volunteer recognition opportunities. That's always a great one. Let's take a look here. A lot are coming in. These are fantastic, guys. Advocacy or grant writing. And then maybe securing an MOU from an agency or assist in drafting strategy timelines to get things done. Those are really great. Everyone's really on the same page here, which is great about recruiting, marketing, fundraising, making sure policies are in place. So yes, these are great. Amy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you, everyone. These are excellent examples of capacity building. So it sounds like this group has it down, and that's good news. I'm going to go ahead and just show some examples that we thought of or that people often provide when we give this sample. So I'm going to go ahead and have Jess post in the chat a link to a resource if you have folks who want to learn more, called Capacity Building in Action for Supervisors, and that's on the VISTA campus. And again, we'll post this link along with the recording, but that's just another resource for your toolbox. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy, who's going to share some recipes for success. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thanks, Amy. So over the past few years, we've come up with a few ideas that we feel are very helpful as a guide for the VISTA project. And again, we see the best outcomes when the following factors are firmly in place. So number one is that the project is focused and is a priority for the agency or the organization, so it isn't just tacked on. We also like to see a strong VAD that is manageable and actionable, that includes hard quantitative outcomes that are expected to be met, as well as a realistic timeline that is broken down quarterly. We encourage sites to select VISTAs with not only the necessary skills to achieve the goals of the VAD, but the necessary personality to learn and to fit with the sub-site's culture. The way we feel is that a lot of skills can be taught in a year, but someone's personality can't be. Further, the supervisor should make sure that they have the time and commitment needed for success. They should also appreciate the role of the VISTA and be willing to make accommodations for VISTA policies as well as being able to act as an advocate as needed. Offering the VISTAs opportunities to learn, grow, and exercise creativity and judgment in a supportive atmosphere can also greatly benefit the success of the project. Now I'll turn it back to Amy, who's going to elaborate on the purpose and importance of the VAD.
Thanks, Jimmy, and this is great because someone wanted more information about VAD, so here we are. The VAD is the position description for each VISTA member. So it's like a job description, but we do call it position description. In addition to the fact that the VAD is a CNCS requirement, it's also a powerful guide for planning and implementing most major responsibilities, including selecting a VISTA candidate, guiding and supporting that member, as well as assessing performance. So VADs help focus our expectations for VISTA members and really define what's realistic for one person to accomplish within a year. All the activities in the VAD should lead to capacity building, and so that's always a good test to know if your VAD's on target. The VAD is a supervision and coaching tool as well. It informs how the supervisor works with the VISTA member. The VAD can also serve as an excellent training needs assessment tool. So having those clearly written activities will allow members to identify additional skills, knowledge, and resources that they might need to accomplish their VAD, and then they can communicate that with their supervisors. So at pre-service orientation, members take a close look at their VAD and they start to identify where they might need additional training, and we have them record that on their individual development plan, and we encourage them to bring that plan with them when they arrive at site and work with you to get any of those additional professional development opportunities they might need to be successful. So that's the VAD in a nutshell. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jessica, who is going to talk about the benefits, rules, and regulations. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you, Amy. So throughout your VISTA service year, they will more than likely have questions related to their VISTA benefits. We recommend that VISTAs use the VISTA Campus to learn more about their benefits, but if they have additional questions, they should contact the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU. The VMSU, contacted through the National Service Hotline, manages the VISTA's service benefits, and they can help address issues before, during, and after a member's service. Jess is going to be posting a link to the benefits page of the VISTA Campus in the chat, so you might want to bookmark that page for your VISTAs. So speaking of the VMSU, let's talk about some of the support areas that they have. So let's talk about end-of-service benefits. So the VMSU can assist VISTA with questions related to using their education award, how they can complete a forbearance or interest accrual request, and also questions about the difference between the education award and the end-of-service stipend. The VMSU also handles candidates' relocation and close-of-service travel reimbursements. If a candidate has a question about their reimbursement or what they need to do in order to get reimbursed, the VMSU will be able to assist them. The VMSU also provides travel support for emergency situations, such as a death in the family. Initial requests for emergency travel should go through your state office, but the VMSU will ultimately book travel for the member or handle their reimbursement for that travel. The VMSU can also help with service letters. So most service letters are available to VISTAs while they are in service or once they end service. Members should try and access their currently serving letter and income disregard letter through their my.americorps.gov account while in service. Once members have ended service, they will be able to access their verification of service letter. But if a member runs into any issues with accessing these letters, the VMSU can send them a letter directly. Another benefit that the VMSU can assist them with is child care. Most issues that VISTA members have with child care is related to the application being denied or that they don't have the proper documentation. VISTA members should work with Gap Solutions Incorporated, which is our child care provider, to resolve any issues with the application. But if they need additional assistance, the VMSU staff can work with Gap Solutions directly to get the issue resolved. Another thing is with health benefits. So healthcare is always a topic that generates a lot of questions. If your visitors have questions about the benefit or where to access more information, the VMSU will be able to assist them and direct them to the appropriate resources. And last but not least, the VMSU can help with member forms. So if your visitors have questions about how to fill out their W-4 or their life insurance or direct deposit, they can assist them with doing that through their my.americorps.gov account. So now we talked about the benefits, so let's go over the terms and conditions here. So as a VISTA supervisor, it is important to know the rules and regulations that you as a supervisor must adhere to, as well as the rules and regulations your VISTAs must follow. If a member violates one of the terms or conditions of service, you as the subsite supervisor should contact the VISTA project director immediately. From there, the project director will contact the corporation state office. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the project and any other members on board, it's critical to act promptly. In general, VISTAs cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their service or well perceived to be a VISTA. They can go to rallies or attend church services on their own non-VISTA time, but they cannot engage in either type of activity while serving or while identifying as a VISTA. It's important to note that at orientation, we do give them VISTA branded gear, such as like a polo or a t-shirt. They should not be wearing these things while they're attending church services. That could be seen as then perceived to be a VISTA. So let's talk about some other policies here. So time and attendance. So as a supervisor, you'll want to monitor a VISTA's time and attendance to ensure that they're serving full time. This usually means about 40 hours a week at most agencies. VISTAs are also entitled to 10 days of annual leave and 10 days of sick leave and should receive any federal holidays recognized by your agency that the rest of the staff receives as holidays. A note on nepotism, just two quick things. A person cannot hold the position of a VISTA member if a member of his or her family exercises supervisory authority over the person. And a person cannot hold the position of a VISTA supervisor if he or she is related to a corporation program official responsible for that VISTA project. If you have any questions about that, you should talk to your project director and the state office, and they can go over more information about that with you. Let's quickly talk about early terminations and resignations of members. If something comes up and a member decides to leave service early, you should contact your project director immediately. From there, the project director should contact the corporation state office. Following the early termination process is critical because it affects payroll, the candidate or the VISTA member's future ability to serve, and the determination of benefits. If a situation arises where a VISTA isn't working out, it might need to be removed or terminated, the sponsor can request the member's removal from the project. So they simply cannot terminate a member or demand their removal from the VISTA program. There are a variety of reasons that a match between a member and a project might not work out. And it'll be up to the state office to review the documentation submitted by you and the project director to determine if a member needs to be terminated, or if they might be able to remain as a VISTA but at a different project. More information about this can be found in the Supervisor's Handbook on the VISTA campus. It is important to remember that you don't have the authority to remove a member from a project. Only the state office can do so. There is a legal process that must be followed, and there's also an appeals process available to members to ensure that their input is shared and heard. So please make sure to follow those policies if an issue like this does come up. Lastly, we want to talk about outside employment. So as of May 3rd, 2015, the prohibition on outside employment has been listed by the VISTA program. While VISTAs are now allowed to have outside employment, there are a few key policy items to keep in mind. So first, outside employment must not conflict with their project service or service hours, nor can it conflict with any applicable law or VISTA program requirements or policies. A VISTA's VISTA assignment must take precedence over outside employment. Their VISTA service must be their first priority, and if they're going to have outside employment, it must work around their VISTA service, not the other way around. Also, they cannot be employed by the sponsor. So under no circumstances may a VISTA member be an employee of or a contractor for the sponsor or project to which he or she is assigned to serve. And lastly, the supervisor must approve. So you as a supervisor must agree that the outside employment will not interfere with the VISTA project. If it does interfere, the VISTA may be asked either in their employment or in VISTA service. An outside employment request form must be completed by the VISTA and submitted to the supervisor for approval. Once you have approved or denied the request, you as a supervisor will need to forward the request to the corporation state office. More information regarding outside employment policy can be found on the VISTA campus, and we'll post that link in the chat. So, we suspect that you may have questions about some of the areas that I just covered. You can ask a question using the Q&A panel located in the right of your screen, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar, along with the questions that come in over the phone. So now that you have an idea of the things that you need to know, Amy is going to review some of the common to-do items. So Amy?
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you, everyone. We see lots of questions coming in, and we are keeping track of them, and we'll have our Q&A session towards the end. So let's take a look at some of the things that you need to do, and we have another poll. I'm going to go ahead and open that just to learn a little bit more about your current responsibilities. As we mentioned, different projects divvy up tasks according to their own needs with their intermediaries. So we're just curious about your current responsibilities. So take a couple minutes to, or probably more like seconds, to fill out the poll. And again, I listed some of the common responsibilities, such as recruiting candidates, selecting and screening candidates, conducting on-site orientation and training, meeting with VISTA members regularly, submitting data for reports, and then maybe you're not sure yet, but you're looking forward to learning more about your role. Okay, so about 7 more seconds. All right, so our poll is calculating, but early numbers are telling me that, let's see, a majority of you are meeting regularly with your VISTA members. Other folks are conducting on-site orientation and training. Fewer people are in charge of recruiting candidates and selecting candidates, so that's, sometimes something that the intermediary does for the sub-site. And then there's a couple folks that want to learn more. So let me just publish that for you so you can see the numbers as well. Great. So it looks like a lot of you have all of these responsibilities on your plate. So let's go ahead and take a look in more detail about some of the things that you might need to do. So first off, recruitment. Step 1 of the recruitment process is to orient yourself to the format and purpose of each of the position VISTA assignment descriptions, or VADs. So we're back to VAD again. The VAD really does guide the VISTA's year and helps you define the type of person that you would be looking for in your recruitment process. The VAD is also the basis for the service opportunity listing, which is the listing that members will see when they apply in My AmeriCorps. So you might be asked to participate in the member recruitment and selection process. We see that not everyone does that, but many of you will. So again, work closely with your intermediary organization to outline the specific tasks and roles. A lot of folks share the tasks with their intermediary. For example, some sub-site supervisors will help with all aspects of recruitment, while others will engage in the interview or help look and vet resumes. So it just depends on how your project's set up. The task list that we looked at earlier will help you frame that conversation with your intermediary. And as I mentioned, it includes links to resources for recruitment as well as tools that are available on the VISTA campus. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Jimmy, who's going to share some insights about recruiting VISTA members from his experience.
Thanks, Amy. So recruitment is extremely important because in our experience, the toll taken on the site, the member, and the project supervisor is high when the match is not right. Having a VISTA who is either not committed to service or who does not have the personal qualities such as ambition, initiative, and a willingness to learn can be more harmful to a site than not having a VISTA at all. To avoid this, supervisors should be thoughtful about the skills and personality needed to do the job, should confirm candidates' commitment to serve, and should call references in addition to the ones in e-grants if they have any doubts about the candidate's ability. Look not only for the fit for their organization and for the supervisor, but with VISTA too. It's not only the skills, but the person that matters. Make sure they match up with your own supervision style. For example, do you prefer an independent worker or a team-centered worker? Do they match with your organizational culture? Is it group-oriented or individual-oriented or professional or laid back? We usually have a 2 to 2.5 month long recruitment window. We give every applicant at least 48 hours to make up their mind about a position after it's offered. This is also important for rural positions that sometimes have a harder time recruiting. We also do lots of pre-screening in order to prevent issues from happening later on. In our position description and in the interview with the site and with Mercy Corps Northwest, we ask every candidate why they're applying to VISTA in particular, as opposed to state, national, or NCCC, to assess how familiar they are with the program. We emphasize that VISTA service is not a job. It's a year of service and a major commitment. Members should not accept the position if they have any doubt that they will be able to complete their one-year term. We also stress that members do not perform direct service, and we give an example of what is and isn't direct service. And we also emphasize that the majority of VISTA service occurs in an office and most likely at a desk. We are sure, however, to highlight how indirect service can make long-term changes and how exciting those can be. And, of course, we note all of the other terms, conditions, and benefits of service, although we distill those down. The way we interview is by using a multi-tiered screening process that includes the site in order to make sure that we're getting good applicants. It goes like this. The site writes a position description based on a template we provide that includes both personal and professional qualifications for the role. After the applications are submitted through e-grants, we as the intermediary screen those applications. Those that meet the qualifications are sent on to the site. The site then interviews those that they want to. They then send us their finalist. We interview the finalist and give the yay or nay, and of course CNCS does final approval. Now let me hand the presentation back to Amy, who's going to be talking a little more about the importance of one-on-one supervision and your role as an active coach and mentor.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thanks for sharing more about your recruitment process. So earlier we touched on your role as a supervisor, but we want to stress again the importance of coaching, mentoring, and support, and how crucial that is for member success. So you can see from these facts listed here from JBS International how important it is that coaching and support happen on a regular basis. Notice that one-on-one supervision is critical. We do suggest that you meet or touch base with your members weekly. We discussed many ways to do this last month during our session called Retaining VISTAs Throughout the Project Lifecycle. So if you are interested in more ways to retain and coach and support, you can watch the recorded webinar on the VISTA Campus. And Jess is going to go ahead and drop that URL into the chat for you. So I want to hear from Jimmy a little bit more about guiding and supporting VISTAs. So we're going to turn it back over to Jimmy to hear some examples from his experience.
Thanks, Amy. So we encourage VISTA supervisors to strive to act as a mentor rather than just as a boss. They should seek to help the member develop skills, adaptability, and values that are going to serve them well throughout their careers, rather than just counting hours. While many VISTAs will come into a project with focus and enthusiasm, it's vital that you work towards an end goal together, checking in frequently and talking them through each step of the project. Be sure to ask open-ended questions and work to understand your VISTA's worldview as well as their skills. When a member falters, look for the core issue. Do their values conflict with yours, for example? Do you both view your roles differently? Try to work to address that as well as the immediate problem. You'll see that we've included on the slide a few tips for engaging your VISTA in a meaningful project-related conversation. You'll find that the more you do this up front and the more readily available you are for your members throughout the year, the better your project outcome and member experience will be. Next, Amy is going to provide some details about what the on-site orientation and training responsibilities include. So over to you, Amy.
Thanks, Jimmy. So really, the coaching and support starts on day one, and the basis for your members' year is really the on-site orientation and training that is provided to them once they get to their site. We often call that OSOT. Onboarding and OSOT are important because they help the members settle in faster, and they also provide them with the basic knowledge and skills needed to get started on the project. So as you would with any employee, a thorough on-site orientation and training is very important. So let's take a look at some typical topics that people cover for VISTA members. So here's a sample list of some topics that you'll want to include in your OSOT. And this list is part of a larger checklist that is available to you on the VISTA campus both as a standalone document, but it's also in the Supervisor Orientation Manual. So this is the manual that your intermediaries get when they attend the in-person training, and it's a great resource for you, so I wanted to highlight it here. Jess is going to go ahead and drop the URL into the chat, and again, we will make sure you get these links with the recording. So another resource for you, the Supervisor Orientation Workbook. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jimmy, who's going to provide some additional details about on-site orientation and training. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thanks again, Amy. So an OSOT, an on-site orientation and training, should provide the specific training information and foundation that a member will need to serve effectively at your site in particular. So an OSOT should be a comprehensive 3 to 4 week process. While your VISTA member is likely eager to work, they will only be effective if they have an understanding of the organization as a whole and their place and connection to the organization and its connection to the community. A strong OSOT sets a good tone for the whole year and can get the member off the ground running. A weak or poorly conceived OSOT can put you behind schedule or make your VISTA have second thoughts about the program. It's the best opportunity that you have to make sure your project is successful, and you should really try not to miss it. In creating an OSOT, make sure that you include some of the following things. Opportunities for the members to get out into the community. Have them come to meetings or join in on conferences or go to client visits. Take them out to the sites where you're working. Enroll them in classes or trainings at your organization as a participant. Be creative. Have them go on a police ride-along or do informational interviews with clients or things along those lines. Have them meet with the program leads at your organization to hear more about what else is going on in the office so that they aren't lost in staff meetings or during other conversations. Give them copies of a recent grant or two to study to look at what the organization's mission and funding look like. Help them understand their project on a socio-cultural level by explaining who the major stakeholders in your community and organization are, their history, needs, and norms, and what the members' role is going to be in collaborating with these groups. You should also try to provide them with incremental but obtainable tasks to accomplish in the first few weeks. For example, have them complete an elevator speech or revise a brochure based on new information that they've discovered. You also want to make sure that you include an MOU that details basic expectations like arrival and departure and lunch times, dress, how many days in advance to ask for leave, or similar. We implemented that a few years ago and have just seen an absolutely dramatic reduction in issues related to small kind of office-oriented problems. I'd also discourage supervisors from making their OSOT basically oriented around just reading the website or something along those lines. It should be active and engaged. So now let me hand things back to Jessica, who's going to review reporting and evaluation details and then wrap up the webinar.
Thanks, Jimmy. So we're going to spend some time recapping the reports that are required by the Corporation for National and Community Service. These are the reporting requirements that CNCS has for your project director and the deadlines. However, your project director will set their own requirements and deadlines for you. We will briefly go over the different reports so that you are aware of what kind of data and information your project director may ask for. So the first report we're going to talk about is the sponsor verification form. The sponsor verification report or form is submitted bi-weekly, and this report is to account for the whereabouts of your VISTAs. So have they been on site? Have they been serving for that time period? This is an important legal responsibility as it affects payroll, the Department of Treasury, and fiscal audits. Also, we have the project progress report, or the PPR. Depending on if you are part of a new project or an existing project, your project director will need to report quarterly or semi-annually. To find out where your project falls, you should contact your project director. Sponsors report on project accomplishments throughout the year, and this report includes narratives from both members and supervisors about the progress of the project. One quick note about the progress report. If you have great news of the VISTA's accomplishments, there is no need to wait until the end of the next quarter to let the project director and the state office know. If your VISTA just won a big grant or hosted a large gala or was interviewed for the newspaper, the state office would love to hear about it before then and help recognize their accomplishments. So please feel free to share those details as they come up. The next report we're going to go over is the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, also known as the VPRS. This report is submitted annually, and it tracks standardized information across all corporation programs. And the VPRS also focuses on building capacity. As your project director may come to you for data and information regarding your VISTA members and the work they are doing, you'll want to ensure you have established tracking tools to collect the data that's relevant for your program. There's a new mobile tool available for your VISTAs to collect data, and it's called the AmeriCorps VISTA Impact app. More information about the Impact app can be found on the VISTA campus, and Jess is going to post a link to that Impact app in the chat. As a reminder, these are the reporting requirements CNCS has for your project director and the deadlines for them. However, your project director will set up their own requirements and deadlines for you. If you have any questions about these reports, please follow up with your project director. So we've talked a lot about different resources, so let's kind of recap some here. So Training Subsite Supervisors Syllabus. So that's a campus self-study guide. This resource is directed at intermediary sponsors, but it is a useful tool for subsite supervisors as it includes a pretty comprehensive list of various need-to-know items. As you can see on the screen, there is a link to the VISTA campus and where you can find this information. As we mentioned earlier, we also have the VISTA Sponsor and Subsite Supervisor Major Tasks at a Glance checklist, which is a great resource that is also available on the VISTA campus. And as Amy pointed out, we have the resources of the supervisor's orientation materials. So the resources that are provided at the in-person supervisor's orientation are also available on the VISTA campus. These are just a few resources that you will find useful. We will include links to these resources along with your recording of this session. So you just went and you participated in this webinar, but now what? Here are a few next steps we would like you to consider. First, you should create a list of questions that you have for your intermediary or project director. You should also set up a time to discuss the VISTA Sponsor and Subsite Supervisor Major Tasks at a Glance document with your intermediary or project director. You should also block time on your calendar for regular check-in sessions with your VISTA members. Sounds like a lot of you already do this, so please continue to maintain that communication. Also, you should participate in other supervisor webinars or watch webinars on demand on the VISTA campus. And last but not least, connect with other supervisors on the Supervisor Cafe forum. Please note, you will need to be logged in to the campus to access the forums, but this is a great way to bounce questions or ideas off other people who are managing VISTAs as well. And Jess is going to post a link to that forum in the chat. So before we get on to questions, we do just want to have you take a few moments to share some feedback on the poll that's on the right-hand side of the screen. Please just take a moment to answer these questions. We do listen to your feedback, and we like to be able to improve these webinars, and your input helps us hugely. So please just take a few minutes to do that. And as I've mentioned before, we have given you a lot to think about, and a lot of questions have come in through the chat. And now it is time to answer those questions. So you can ask a question using the Q&A panel located in the right of your screen. And I'll also now ask the operator to let us know how you can ask a question by the phone. So operator, are you there?
Yes, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 and record your name clearly. Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star followed by 1 on your touch-tone phone.
Thank you so much. So while we wait for questions to come in over the phone, let me go over some questions that came in through the chat. So someone asks here, when are service letters available? Is it within 2 weeks of a candidate's start date? That's a great question. So when your VISTA members go to pre-service orientation, after pre-service orientation, they begin their VISTA service. And the VISTA Member Support Unit activates those candidates within 5 business days of PSO. So within a week's time, your candidates should have access to those letters in the system. And then for service letters that are applicable to once they end service, that's once they're exited from service. So within about a week or so from when they go to PSO, and probably about a week or so after they end service, they'll have access to those service letters. That's a great question. Another question that we got here, we got a couple of these. There with regard to SNAP or food stamps. So we did get a couple of questions about, does VISTA help with the process for applying for food stamps, and can VISTAs even apply for food stamps? So, so food stamps is a state-run program, or SNAP is a state-run program. The Corporation for National Community Service and the VISTA program does not manage, does not provide those benefits, does not have a hand in those benefits. Your VISTAs are more than likely eligible to apply. They can go ahead and apply, but VISTA has nothing to do with the determination of benefits or if they're automatically guaranteed for that. A couple of things to note for your VISTA members, and this is something that they are told at PSO, is if they were receiving food stamps prior to becoming a VISTA member, their level of benefits shouldn't be altered based on the living allowance they're going to receive. If, however, they apply once they've already begun service, their living allowance amount will count towards eligibility. So definitely, if they want to explore that option, they can go ahead and feel free to do so, but the corporation is not involved in that process. So let's see if there's any questions on the phone. Do we have any questions on the phone, operator?
We do have one question from Lydia. Your line is open.
I'm sorry, my whole system here crashed in the office. I didn't get to hear how candidates are able to apply, because I had a phone call the other day asking that question, how VISTA, I guess individuals wanting to become a VISTA member, or if they've seen the VAD, how do they apply?
And you mean apply directly to a project?
Correct.
Right. So, so yeah, no, that's a great question. So, so to officially apply for a VISTA position, they would need to go to the the AmeriCorps.gov website and create a profile on there, search for a listing, and apply through the My AmeriCorps system. A lot of times projects may post a position on like Idealist or some other like job finder website, but and they can apply directly through that as well, but they will ultimately have to do an application through the My AmeriCorps system to be onboarded as a VISTA.
And then how long does it take once they do their profile to be able to start doing recruitments?
Are you talking about for the project, or are you talking about a member to apply?
For the project, once they've already created a profile.
So if a project is wanting to recruit VISTAs, they will need to would need to work with the state office about you know, getting approved for a VISTA project, how many VISTAs they're going to have. They would need to make sure you know, all of the appropriate applications are in place, It can, it really just depends on a case-by-case basis. If everything is in a row, it can go pretty quickly. Jimmy, I don't know if you have any experience with this on how long it took for you when you first applied for funding?
Oh, for funding. Usually it's pretty quick. When we submit a posting for approval, typically our program officer within 2 days has approved it and it's gone live. Applications usually start coming in, anywhere from immediately to typically we see more like the first weekend after is when we start seeing the most come through.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
This is Amy here. I just wanted to mention that we do have a ton of resources that are step-by-step to help folks with the recruitment process. Everything from writing your position description to how to enter those in e-grants. So please do visit vistacampus.gov and check out the Supervisor section, and you'll find information about recruiting.
Great. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Jimmy. So we did get a question here about outside employment. So someone asked here, what if can we hire somebody at the organization if it's unrelated to their VISTA position? So with regard to outside employment, you can't hire them. They can't work at the same organization where they're currently serving. It's perceived to be a conflict of interest. As I mentioned, this new policy on outside employment was just introduced May of this year. For the past 50 years, this just couldn't have outside employment. So this is a fairly new, a new policy for us. So if it's definitely something that a VISTA wants to explore and see if it could be approved, it's something that you should definitely have them fill out that request form and then discuss it with your state office. Definitely have them review it to see, if this is something that could be allowable, but in general, they cannot be hired to work at the organization that they're currently serving as a VISTA member. So let's take a look here. What other questions are coming out? We had a question about taxes and VISTA's living allowances. So with regard to VISTA's taxes, federal taxes are taken out of a VISTA's living allowance, but state taxes are not. They are still required to pay state taxes. So this is something that they'll want to work with and to make sure they budget for, so that they are prepared once tax season rolls around to pay those state taxes. But federal taxes are, state taxes are not taken out. Operator, do we have any other questions on the phone?
We do, and as a reminder, please press *1 to ask a question. Estella, your line is open.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful webinar. I am from Philadelphia Catholic Social Services. My question is regarding the VAD, which was created, and I wasn't clear. In addition to that, should I develop a specific job description for the candidate?
Yeah, so are you talking about like having the VAD plus a separate job description for the VISTA position?
Correct.
So they should be one and the same. So the position description, the VISTA assignment description should be used as a position description for your VISTA. So there shouldn't be two different job descriptions for them. That can lead to some confusion. Okay. So definitely that's something that you want. The duties, the assignments, the activities should all be in that VISTA assignment description.
Okay. So the VAD should be the guide to move forward.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Correct. Yes, and that's a great segue. We did have another question that came in about VADs. So someone said, do I need to make sure that the VISTAs have their VAD to take the PSO? That is a yes, 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 yes. They absolutely positively need a VAD for when they come to pre-service orientation. There is a whole half day that we dedicate towards the VAD, and they absolutely need that VAD in order to be able to ask the appropriate questions to kind of get a better understanding of what they're going to be doing. We have seen where VISTAs come in and they don't really have a VAD. They have a very generic VAD, and it's detrimental to their learning process here at PSO, and they're not as prepared once they go on site. So definitely, if you are having candidates go to pre-service orientation, they need a VAD, and they need a finalized VAD. And I can't stress that importance enough. So that's a great question, but yes, they definitely do need the VADs when coming to PSO. Do we have any questions on the phone, operator?
No further questions at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let me take a look here and see what other questions we have.
Jessica, Amy, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I noticed one other question about the VAD, since we're on VADs. Early in the session, there was a question, does the program goal within the VAD capture the whole agency goals or just the goal associated with that position?
That's a great question, and thank you for catching that, Amy. And I'll also let Jimmy touch on this since he works with VADs in the project, the overall project goal. So they should definitely have links. You know, definitely it doesn't want to be, you know, the project goal and the agency goal shouldn't be completely different. It should mostly be focused on the project goal, like the VISTA project goal. And that's what the VAD and those activities should be focused on. But there should be some tie-in, and there should be some link to the bigger organization's mission. Definitely don't want those completely different opposite sides of the spectrum. Jimmy, do you have any more insights on that since you work with this on a daily basis?
I think that's pretty dead on. I would just say that, you know, there should be aligned pretty closely. And, you know, if it's a strategic priority for your organization, but not yet a program that the VISTA would necessarily be supporting, so long as it's going to happen, as long as there's that force behind it, then that's typically okay, so long as a foundation is in place. But yeah, they should be pretty closely tied together. And the times we have seen projects that are kind of really tangential to that organizational mission, typically we find that they don't get the attention that they need, or that they've kind of been tacked on rather than really thoroughly envisioned. So keep them aligned.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. And so this is definitely, the VAD topic has definitely spurred some other questions here, so let's keep on the VAD track while we're here. So someone asked here in the chat, do the VISTAs download their VAD from the website, or does the site give it to them? So, so when a candidate is like placed into their VISTA service term once they're recruited for, that VAD should be attached to their my.americorps.gov account. That is the VAD that should be the final VAD. You can definitely also send them a VAD via email as well, just so that they have it. But you'll want to make sure that those VADs line up. At pre-service orientation, we do see a lot of times where candidates like, well, my site sent me this one, but this other one is attached to my account and they're different. And it causes a lot of confusion. So definitely you want to make sure that the final VAD is the one that is attached to their account. And if you are going to send it separately, make sure it's the same VAD. We just don't want them running into any unnecessary confusion once they're at PSO or even once they're on site. So they can definitely get that letter from the my.americorps.gov system. So let's make sure where we are now. So let's take a look here. What other questions do we have coming in? So, so someone asked here, what happens after VISTA members exceed their allowed days? And I think that this question is talking about leave days. Please, if that's not correct, please correct me in the chat here. First and foremost, you want to be proactive with leave days. So you definitely want to have a mechanism to track how many days your VISTA has taken, whether that's sick days or personal days. If you have a lot of projects tend to use the same sort of system that they use for their employees to track time and attendance. So definitely you want to make sure that you're tracking that before it gets to a situation where, oh, you already took 15 days and we didn't know. If there are those kind of things that are coming up, if you notice that, you know, your VISTA is getting really close to their days, or they've already taken 10 and they're requesting another 5, it's something you probably want to have a one-on-one conversation with your VISTA to see what's going on, to make sure that they understand what that requirement is. If it becomes an issue or if something else is going on, such as maybe a health issue or something like that, you'll want to talk to the project director and the state office to see where to go from here. But really, this should be tracked ahead of time so that before additional days beyond what's allowed is already taken, you can manage that ahead of time. But it is something you'll want to talk to the state office about if you see that this might be coming up. So another question here came in about the service letters, and I know that this is a question that we tend to get a lot too at PSO, and I'm sure you're getting this as supervisors. Someone here asked, what should VISTA members do when they need proof of income that would come from a service letter before PSO? So that's a great question because they're not in service yet, so they won't have access to those service letters. So if they're not in service yet, the VISTA program and the Corporation for National and Community Service cannot provide them a letter that says that they will be serving and how much they're going to make. Because they are not in service, this is not a letter that we can provide. If they need something, what we ask is maybe, or what we suggest to VISTAs is if they can get a letter directly from their site that just says, yes, this person is going to be serving as a VISTA. At my site, I can certify that they're going to be serving here. Definitely all official letters should come from the corporation. We do understand that people are trying to find housing, that people are trying to get stuff settled before they officially start. So we do understand that those questions may come up prior to them starting service. So definitely if you can provide something that just says I can certify they're going to be here and still have an official letter and X date, that's always a great way to support your VISTAs. But unfortunately, the corporation and the VISTA program cannot provide that letter prior to them officially starting service. Let's see, we're jumping all over the place, I apologize. Someone here said, how long is a typical VAD? So, and I'm going to shoot this one to Jimmy as well. There's not like a standard, it has to be 500 words or more. You really want to make sure that it captures the duties and that it's not really vague or that it's not overly ambitious. So Jimmy, do you have a more elegant way of putting that, or how do you, when you draft VADs, what is your standard of drafting those?
Sure. So typically we say no more than 2 pages if in the e-grant system. So I don't know exactly how much that would come out to in terms of actual word count, but I do know for the overall project goal description, we say no more than 60 words. And then typically for each kind of objective, we say, I believe, no more than 50. And then for each activity that would go into those, typically we try to limit it to 25 for each one. And like I said, it comes out to roughly 2 pages. And otherwise, it seems like sites are maybe getting, trending too much into kind of doing the bean counting thing. And otherwise, it might be a little too vague. So we really try to strike that balance where the members still know what their quantitative outcomes are expected to be and kind of the general sense of how they're going to approach their objectives, but not so much that, you know, for example, if they're going to be helping with a website redesign, that it talks about, you know, specifically what kind of programs they're going to be using to do that. We wouldn't want to see that in the VAD, but we would want to see that, you know, they would be redesigning the website for this, that, and the other purpose, and kind of what would be used to kind of evaluate its successfulness. That being said, a website probably isn't a good example since in most cases that probably wouldn't be a great VISTA project, but it's just what came off the top of my head.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. That's a great standardized procedure you guys have. That's fantastic. So we did have a question here. What is the policy on the VISTA member resigning from the organization just for personal reasons? So as we mentioned earlier, there's a variety of reasons that that maybe it isn't working out, or you know, maybe someone has something personal going on. Maybe maybe they can't serve any longer due to financial hardship, or they maybe have accepted other employment or something like that. more information about the early termination procedures and what that entails can be found on the VISTA campus. But if you're VISTA, there's two ways we categorize candidates leaving early. There are candidates who resign for non-compelling reasons, and then there's compelling reasons. So non-compelling reasons, if they resign, let's give the example of outside or of additional employment. So if they accepted full-time work somewhere else and they want to end their VISTA service early to take outside employment, like full-time employment, so they can no longer serve. That is what we consider non-compelling. What that means is that they end service, they do not receive an end-of-service benefit, so they don't receive that education award or that end-of-service stipend. It doesn't necessarily bar them from ever serving with VISTA again. It's just they don't receive their end-of-service benefit. Compelling reasons, if someone ends service early for compelling reasons such as it can be like health issues or something like that, if they are ending service for those reasons, it's something that's called compelling. If it is like for medical reasons, specific documentation must be submitted in order to prove that compelling termination, and they can get a prorated award. So there's a bunch of nuances that go in with that. There's a bunch of requirements for each kind of termination, but basically it falls into two categories, compelling or non-compelling, and what they're entitled to for a benefit, if anything, after they end. So hopefully that answers your question. If there are more specific questions, please feel free to put that in the chat. So let's go through here other questions. Amy, I don't know if you may have seen additional ones that I have not yet seen.
I see one here. It says, does the VMSU also send the non-compete letter to apply for a federal job? I think this is in regards to NCE.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So when candidates, or I'm sorry, when VISTA members end service and they've officially ended their full year of service, their non-competitive eligibility letter will be available in their MyAmericorps account. It's not something that they have to specially request from the VMSU. It's something that will automatically be available to them in their MyAmericorps account. They'll need to, if they want to apply for federal employment and use non-competitive eligibility, that is the letter they will need to submit. We definitely recommend that once candidates end service and they have access to that letter, that they save a copy of that letter for them so they don't have to go into their AmeriCorps account each time. That's a great question. It's something that automatically comes up, they can automatically get. If for some reason they can't find it, they don't see it, they can call the VISTA Member Support Unit, and the VISTA Member Support Unit will be able to give them that letter. But the easiest way for them to do it is just to go into their account once they end service. But great question, thank you for that. So we had another question here. So can a VISTA member go to a church recruitment fair to recruit church members to volunteer and or share our volunteer needs? So, so a VISTA can definitely go and recruit. They can recruit from wherever. They can recruit, students. They can recruit businessmen. They can recruit people who are affiliated with the church. They cannot, with regard to religious activities and that the prohibition on that, it's really that they can't proselytize and they can't try to, and part of their VAD can't be to proselytize or to pray or to recruit people to a church, those sorts of things. The religious activities as well as like political activities, it can be very nuanced. And so there is a list in the VISTA, on the VISTA campus in the VISTA member handbook of prohibited activities. So I would definitely suggest having your VISTAs and or you look at those prohibited activities just to make sure that everything is good to go. If you have any question about, is this okay if my VISTA participates in this, a great person to follow up with is your state office. They're going to be able to talk to you more about that to see what's the situation, what kind of recruitment will they be doing, and to make sure that it falls within the guidelines and policies. But that is a great question. Let's take a look. And it looks like Amy here did post a link to the VISTA member handbook in the chat. So you can definitely just click on that and check that out really quickly. Operator, do we have any questions on the phone?
Not at this time, but as a reminder, please press star 1.
Thank you so much. So let's take a look here. So Amy, are there any other questions that you saw? I think I've captured them all, but that I could find.
Yeah, I think we've answered them. I did see one that came in that asked about could we explain the medical benefits, and I did suggest that that person take a look at the detailed information about benefits on the VISTA campus because it's fairly detailed. I don't know if you have any more background on that, but I think it it might take some time.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely healthcare, like we mentioned, is always a heavy topic. And so definitely the link that Amy shared, definitely check that out for the benefits. A quick overview of what the health benefits are. As you all know, with the Affordable Care Act, everybody is required to have health insurance, and that does include VISTA members. If a VISTA candidate or a VISTA member has health insurance either through the marketplace or through their parents or through a spouse or Medicaid or Medicare, they are eligible for our health allowance. The health allowance for the year 2015 is $6,600, and what that means is that it's a reimbursable amount of up to $6,600 for medical expenses such as copays or prescriptions. They can get that allowance. An important thing to note, it doesn't cover premiums, but can cover copayments and prescriptions. If they're exempt from having to have health insurance, if they're legally exempt, we do have a health benefit plan that covers some basic medical benefits. So it's really, healthcare, unfortunately, it's not an easy one-size-fits-all for everyone, and they should definitely check out the resources that Amy posted, as well as healthcare.gov. They are all given information, and we do discuss with them at pre-service orientation a little bit more about the health benefits, so they can also get that as well. Let's take a look here. Someone here had a question. VISTA members have been asked to provide a letter to their representative to explain the benefits of national service for funding discussions. Can they do that as a VISTA? So this, I've never heard of this question before. So Diane, it's the first time I've ever gotten this question. This sounds, I don't know why or who would be asking for this. This is something I would definitely send to your state office, or you can email. We have an email here at the in our next slide. If you want to email us or email your state office, we would definitely like to look into this because it's something that we haven't heard of before, and we want to make sure that VISTAs aren't being asked to do something they shouldn't be doing. So that's a great question. I'm happy you brought that up, and I'd love to follow up with you more on that. So, so if you could please do that, that would be great. Amy, do you see any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's one from a little bit earlier, and the question is, if our listing on MyAmericorps states that the start date is February 15th, 2016, can we start someone earlier if we find the appropriate person and the process works faster than we originally thought?
That's a great question. So we definitely want you to start recruitment as soon as possible. And we understand that someone, you may find someone in the next week who's just amazing. It's something you want to talk to your state office about to see if that process, if you can bring someone on earlier. An important thing to note is that all VISTAs are required to go to pre-service orientation prior to beginning service. So, in November, we're having pre-service orientations. This is our last week of pre-service orientations in 2015, and our next round of pre-service orientations will not be until February. So more than likely, that timeline of February will need to stay because they will need to attend pre-service orientation before beginning VISTA service. But definitely, if you have more questions about that, it's something that your state office would be able to answer since they manage your project directly. But those are great questions. We definitely encourage you to start the recruitment process as soon as possible and get on that. And I would definitely make sure to communicate the realistic timeline for when a member could start. So if you're recruiting for somebody, definitely have them with the thought of February as a start date, rather than, saying, yeah, you can probably start in a couple of weeks, just to be on the safe side. But definitely with those kind of questions, follow up with your state office. So it looks like we've gone through most of the questions here. I do just want to thank everybody for participating in this webinar. As we wind down here from the webinar, we do just want to let you know that if you have any further questions or more information, that you should contact our VISTA webinars at cns.gov page. That will be on the next slide. We'll show you that. There it is. So if you have further questions, if something comes up, please email us at vistawebinars@cns.gov. We do monitor that, and that will be answered. Also, you should join us for our next webinar, Strategies for Connecting with Sites and VISTA's Added Distance. This will be on December 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern, so please join us for that. We also encourage you to let your VISTAs know about the recordings that they have for webinars for them. We did just recently do a avoiding burnout webinar for VISTA members. So if you have some VISTAs here who might be kind of in a slump, you may want to point them to that webinar and see if that can give them some good tips on avoiding that burnout. Once again, thank you all for your participation. We really appreciate you joining us. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.